today, and thank you for everybody that's joining us in the committee room. Today, we will have budget hearing from Kansas State University, Kansas State University Medical Center, or I should say Vet Med Center, Kansas State University Extension and Ag Research. After we conclude the budget presentations, we will work on the University of Kansas and the University of Kansas Medical Center budget recommendations. I am scheduled to report that out to appropriations tomorrow, so it's imperative we get to work. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome Brianna Horton, fiscal analyst with the Kansas Legislative Research Department, to do a brief summary overview of Kansas State University. Brianna, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair Committee. Brianna Horton with KLRD. As the chair stated, I'm going to give a brief overview. So if there's any questions about what's in the budget, please feel free to ask me later on or send me an email. I'd be happy to answer. So that first page gives you an overview of Kansas State and the history of Kansas State on page 1. If we flip to page 2, you can see the approved. You can see that there are no supplemental requests because those are in the Board of Regents and we've worked that budget already. And then you can see those other changes. So a lot of these other changes you will see in each university budget, which includes the DEI adjustment. That was money that the State Finance Council put back into those budgets. State capital renewal, the operating adjustment. They did have a demolition transfer of $800,000 that I mentioned in my K-Board budget. So that has now been transferred to Kansas State and now pops up in their budget. And then also need-based aid, which you will also see in all the university budgets. So I'm just going to skip to page 5 and just highlight item number 12 for the Educational Building Fund. There is $18.5 million in EBF for multiple rehab and repair projects, including Anderson Hall renovations, Seton Hall renovations, Weber Arena demolition, the raising of Ahern Gymnasium and Auditorium, and Eisenhower Classroom, and HVAC renovations. I also, on that same note, wanted to reference item number 15, which is for deferred maintenance support. There are $7.1 million all from special revenue funds for deferred maintenance projects. And then those are listed out there. You'll note in this budget there are no changes from LBC. So LBC approved the budget that Kansas State submitted. If we turn to page 7, you'll see that same summary table for fiscal year 2026. There are no enhancement requests, though those enhancement requests are inside of the Kansas Board of Regents budget. Again, you'll see that DEI adjustment, student financial aid. You'll see that appropriation, that negative $25 million is for the K-State Ag Innovation Center, which the 2024 legislature appropriated last year. If you turn to page 9 and item 11, that just highlights the College of Agricultural Infrastructure. So that has to do with the Ag Innovation Project, and there's some buildings for agronomy research and innovation, the Bilberry Family Event Center, and the Global Center for Grain and Food Innovation. And so there's some additional information on these projects in the back of the capital improvement section. Since we're already there, we're going to go to page 11. And so that highlights all of the projects that are happening. So I broke them out kind of by funding source. So there's state capital renewal, which is what they received from the Board of Regents. Then there's state demolition funds. Then there's other state funded projects that don't really have a grouping. Then there's funding for Ag Innovation Center, which has SGF, and then non-SGF money is spent on that projects. And then there's about $34 million in other projects. I've done my best to list as many as I can. I'd be happy to provide you guys with a list that I have from the university about what those projects are, but for space purposes, I just try and kind of hit high value capital budget projects. And then of course, there are those reference tables that show the 10-year change, the breakdown of programs, and then those FTE for those programs. And then just some special topics back there. Those break down what those programs are, what they serve, and things like that. And with that, Mr. Chair, with my brief overview, I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Brianna, for your presentation. Do any members of the committee have any questions for Brianna? Seeing none, Brianna, we thank you for your presentation, and we can always circle back if we have any other technical questions for you. So thank you. That being said, I also want to just thank our staff and support staff for working so hard in a accelerated budget timeline this year. They've really gone above and beyond. So thank you for sticking with us and supporting us and helping us. Next, we will go into our budget presentation. I'd like to welcome to the podium Dr. Richard Linton, President of Kansas State University. President Linton, welcome to the committee.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and rest of the Higher Education Committee. It's an honor for me to serve as president of Kansas State University, and want to first start by thanking you for your partnership and your collaboration over the last several years as we have, I think, created great momentum for Kansas State University. So I guess I need a clicker. Is that right? Yeah. If you recall, when I first came here almost 3 years ago to provide my initial presentation, we talked about the first effort at Kansas State being the creation of a strategic plan that will take us in a much different direction, a much stronger direction to be able to help Kansans and to be able to help a land-grant thrive and be the best that it can be. And we called that the Next Generation Land-Grant University. And we're a little bit different in the way in which we're thinking about building a land-grant university over the foundational elements of research and teaching and cooperative extension and engagement. And that truly does make us different. We are responsible for providing partnerships and economic growth and development in all 105 counties in the state. It's a statewide strategy, and we focus on two things that are very important to us: optimizing the student experience on all three of our campuses and fostering opportunities for economic growth and economic development for the state of Kansas. I wanted to briefly just provide some input relative to some of the progress related to the strategic plan, and then I'll get into the budgetary items towards the end of the presentation. As I go through each one of these metrics in the strategic plan, you'll see a similar like image which shows where we started from a data point perspective at the beginning of the plan, where we are today, and then where our goal is in 2030. Our biggest challenge when I arrived here was a 25% decrease in student enrollment, going down to the lowest point that we had been in a long period of time. So we've worked very hard in strategizing and better communications, in philanthropy, to be able to help with student affordability and student debt, to be able to work, to be able to turn the train and start increasing in student numbers. And you'll see we've headed towards that path. In fact, last year was the strongest growth that we had in student enrollment in over a decade, and for the first time in over 8 years, we've surpassed 20,000 undergraduate and graduate students on our campus. The other direction that we've gone that's different is we're not only focusing on providing undergraduate and graduate degree programs, but we're also focusing on those potential learners that might not need a degree or might need an elevated level of education to be able to further them in their career. Take an example, someone that might work at Cargill that wants to get involved in data analytics, but data analytics didn't exist 20 years ago when they were in college. We can provide the education that's required to take them to the next level in their career path. The other element that we're proud of relative to differentiating our student experience on the K-State campus is applied learning. And so all of our students by the end of the strategic plan in 2030 will be required to have an applied learning experience, which would be undergraduate research or an international experience or leadership in student government, as well as additional skill sets that will enable them to be successful and leaders right out of the gate. Things like negotiation skills, communication skills, and things of that nature. We know that this is working, and you'll hear a lot in my presentation about a partnership with philanthropy. We have raised so far $25 million to be able to support this student effort on our campus. We're also proud of what we're trying to accomplish in partnership with our community colleges. We know as a land-grant institution, it's our mission to be able to help provide education and opportunities across the entire state, and in some cases, forming partnerships with community colleges makes a lot of sense. We recently, just over the last few weeks, signed a partnership agreement with Garden City Community College, thereby offering opportunities for a 4-year degree program in Finney County at Garden City Community College, working in partnership with the community college and with Kansas State University. And it provides students like this student here, Bryant Tomeo, who wants to be a Formula One team engineer, and now he has that opportunity to do that. Research success and the goal around research when I first started was broad and bold, to be able to enhance our reputation as an R1 research institution. When you raise the reputation, you enhance the amount of students that are interested in coming to Kansas State, and you retain the very, very best talent, and you're able to recruit really strong talent to grow your university to make a difference in Kansas, the nation, and the world. These are two figures that show metrics that are important to us relative to research. The one on the left is the total amount of money that we spend in research, and the one on the right is the total amount of competitive awards that come into our faculty. I'll point to the right as an example of great progress. Going from $185 million in sponsored programs to 225 represents a 22% increase, the largest increase that we are aware of any land-grant university in the country. So the investments and the change in strategy, we believe, is working to elevate research. We're also very proud of our people. Here's just one example, Jürgen Richt. He is a faculty member in the College of Veterinary Medicine, and he kind of won the Academy Award for university professors, and that he was recently elected into the National Academy of Medicine, a very, very prestigious honor. Just one example of all of our great faculty that are helping to support the research mission. Of course, economic development is important to us. I had mentioned in the first slide that when we think about a next generation land-grant university, it's about enhancing that student experience, but it's also about providing opportunities for the state of Kansas. And last year, if you recall, we did an economic impact study of Kansas State, which is about $2.3 billion a year to the Kansas economy alone. And you can see some of our aspirations about job creation and helping to be able to build the infrastructure of the economy here in Kansas. K-State 105, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, is, we believe, one of the strongest drivers to be able to help enable our success in economic growth and development, job creation. We also are building teams. We are building teams for what we think Kansas stakeholders need. Here are just 4 examples of building interdisciplinary teams across campus to be able to deliver on what's important for Kansans. We're now a health promoting university, which is focusing on both mental health and physical health for faculty, staff, and students on campus. We've got a team that's been built on digital agriculture and advanced analytics to be able to help grow and make more efficient our #1 economic engine in the state, which is agriculture. Working on a biomanufacturing training and education center institute, which has received support from the state of Kansas in partnership with philanthropic support and support from the university to be able to drive on a lot of jobs that will be created in the future in the agricultural economy. And then, of course, the Kansas Water Institute. And we all know how important water resource management is for our state. And in fact, the investment made into the Kansas Water Institute will hire 12 new faculty in this area and space. It will collaborate with partnerships around the entire state. And it's also led to a recently announced significant grant to be able to help support their efforts federally. It was mentioned earlier about a lot of different building projects and a lot of infrastructure projects on our campus. If you recall, 2 years ago, we had an aspiration to be able to have a 9-building project where 2 buildings will be taken down because they can't be modernized, 2 will be renovated, and then 5 new buildings through capital construction. I want to let you know that we're doing very well relative to the progress on these buildings. You'll see an example of 4 of the new capital construction. The Bilby Family Event Center is actually a livestock arena, which will be on our campus. We'll have the ribbon cutting for that in the fall of 2025. 2 buildings for the Agronomy Research and Innovation Farm, which sits right across from Bill Snyder Stadium. A new interdisciplinary science center, the Global Center for Grain and Food Innovation. That building will be completed August of 2026. And then Weber and Call Hall. Call Hall is where the ice cream comes. It's very important that we renovate that space and make it as modernized as we possibly can. This is a $210 million project. It's the most aspirational project of a land-grant university in agriculture in the history of land-grant universities. We couldn't have gotten there without your help and support, specifically through ARPA dollars that were state-directed. It enabled us to raise about 145 of the 210 million that was needed for this project. We're about $15 million short of meeting the full needs of this project, and it'll be transformational for the state and for Kansas State University. You know, I've mentioned a lot and a lot of the different successes where philanthropy has played a very important role. We have an aspiration to, in partnership with state and federal opportunities and with the university spending, to be able to use philanthropy as a way to be able to leverage and partner. And with that, we have an aspiration to be able to raise $2 billion by the year 2030. And my slide, although it's only a few days old, is very old in data. I was told this morning that we're actually $771 million in philanthropic support. Another big goal of mine when I first came here was to be able to reach out throughout the state and to be able to listen and learn to what our Kansas stakeholders needed so that we could build a strategic plan that was focused on Kansans first. And this is a slide I showed last year that we went all around the state and actually had a connection with every single one of the 105 counties over 15 or 16 different trips over a year and a half period. We then followed up with that effort with what we're calling meeting the promise of Kansans throughout the entire state, and revisited a number of communities to be able to identify what are the important issues of the day that we need to be able to help better serve communities. And so you'll see a lot of our engagement and outreach efforts refocused into areas like childcare and healthcare and rural healthcare and water conservation and telehealth. These are the kinds of things that our communities need, and we're working very hard to be able to deliver on these, specifically through our extension network throughout the state. So how do we meet the needs of Kansans? As we look forward to the next several slides, I'll walk through some of the KBOR-approved Kansas State University requests, and then talk about some of the requests through the Kansas Board of Regents. There are two Kansas State University requests. These are both recurring requests. The first is for continuation of K-State 105. If you recall, 2 years ago, K-State 105 was approved and authorized for funding at $5 million a year for a 2-year period as an experiment to be able to see how well we could deliver on that promise and create partnerships and create jobs and form entrepreneurial opportunities around the entire state. And I'll walk through some of the impacts of that in just a moment. I will say, too, that each of you should have gotten a separate piece of paper with your name on it, which provides very specific impacts of K-State 105 in the area of which you represent for the state, to be able to show the statewide presence and specifically how the investments are being made in your particular part of the state. And the second request that we'll talk through is a really important need for the College of Veterinary Medicine. It's a $7.5 million recurring request to be able to help us operationally in order to be able to compete well with our peers and partner well with NBAF and Pat Roberts Hall, which is our level 3 facility. So from a K-State 105 perspective, I think it's all about relationships. It's all about partnerships. It's all about how we could connect with our cooperative extension system, find partnerships out in the state such that we could drive opportunities for job creation and for business development. And you can see here, this just represents the first year of funding. You'll see that the majority of the funding is pushed right back into the counties and communities. So 90% of those dollars go right back into communities where it can be put to action. And you'll see all 105 counties and communities have some type of a positive impact with this program. Over 400 jobs created or retained, and over 415 businesses connected with and worked with to be able to help create them, or to be able to help enable them to grow. I've been working in higher education for 35 years now, and been involved in cooperative extension at Purdue for the state of Indiana, Ohio State and Ohio, and Virginia Tech in Virginia, and then most recently in North Carolina. I have not seen another statewide program that's been this impactful right out of the gate from an economic perspective. Really proud of the work that's being done. I'll also just say that one sidearm of K-State 105 is called the Entrepreneurial Blueprint Initiative. It just provides an example of how we're reaching out and helping entrepreneurism and small business development. At present, you can see that we're working in, I think it's 11 or 12 different areas, 11 community organizations across the state to be able to have specific work that's working to be able to build out entrepreneurism and help the small business owner. The College of Veterinary Medicine, and this has been a long time request for many years, is one that I wanted to bring a little bit of data to, because I think now is an important time with NBAF opening up last year, and with the capacity of having a BSL Level 3 and a BSL Level 4 facility on our campus for all species. Nobody else has that in the world, and we need to have a really strong veterinary college in order to be able to work around research innovation and assure that we have the right talent and the right amount of talent to be successful. You can see here that when you compare us with other veterinary colleges, especially our peers around the country, and I'll show you data in just a second, we're about 12 million below the average relative to that support. And what that does is that it makes us have to accept more out-of-state students than in-state students. And that leaves a void and a challenge for the need of veterinarians here in the state of Kansas. Right now, we're about 60% out-of-state, 40% in-state, and we'd like to flip those numbers so that we can be delivering that education and that opportunity to Kansans in a much better way. I had mentioned the importance of partnering with NBAF. This is a huge opportunity to partner with USDA ARS, and this is one way in which we might be able to accomplish this. I know that this slide's a little bit difficult to see, but kind of in the middle, you'll see a red box. That's the average amount of support that's provided for colleges of veterinary medicine around the country. And then if you see below in the bigger box, the purple box, this is the support for Kansas State University. Those green boxes would represent other universities and their supports. They are our competitors in this space. They're competing for talent and they're competing for research innovation. I will mention too, the one that's right below us is actually Oklahoma State. And because of their size, which is very similar to ours, they have a probational period for accreditation because of the smallness that they have, and we are getting close to that challenge at Kansas State University. On the right-hand side is our productivity. Our productivity from a research perspective, I think we're the 8th strongest college of veterinary medicine in the country relative to research productivity. So you have this challenge and pressure of incredible research productivity, but not the capacity to be able to provide the other functions that are important for a college of veterinary medicine. From a Kansas Board of Regents perspective, and I understand you've had other presidents and chancellors and also the Kansas Board of Regents, so you've probably heard most of this. Most of the ask from a Kansas Board of Regents perspective is around faculty and staff compensation, around student success through what we're calling the NIST playbook, and also support for cyber. I wanted to focus just on one of those 3 areas because faculty and staff compensation affects us every single day. At Kansas State University, we just did a compensation study. 72% of our present faculty are below market compared to our peers and aspirational peers, and that's the midpoint line of our peers and aspirational peers. 67% of our staff are below market. And you can see it's a big number in order to be able to bring us just back to average compared to our peers and aspirational peers. Let me give you just one aspect of the impact of that, and this is just to the research piece of the university. In the last 6 years, we've lost 135 faculty, where compensation in an exit interview has been part of the reason why. And that's lost also with that $16.7 million in research funding that faculty member takes to other institutions. The state of Texas, the state of Missouri, the state of Illinois, the state of California are all taking our best talent because they can offer a better package relative to compensation for faculty and for staff. As I end, Mr. Chairman, just one last slide. We always like to invite you to, when we come, celebrate an aspect of Kansas State University. So K-State Impact Day, will be on February the 19th from 10 to 2 p.m., and it's going to be in the first floor rotunda, where we're going to be focusing on our resilient communities and our connection and work that we're doing statewide with counties all over the state of Kansas. And of course, Call Hall Dairy Bar ice cream will be served at 12 o'clock, and I will be dipping that ice cream. With that, Mr. Chairman, I again thank you. Thank you for the time that I have today, and thank you for support of higher education and for Kansas State. And I'll take questions at this time if allowed.
Thank you, President Linton, for your presentation before the committee today. So committee members, we will try to wrap up questions by 2:15, so we have ample time to work on KU Med and University of Kansas Medical Center budgets. So I'll open it up for questions to President Linton, Vice Chair Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, President Linton. So I want to go back. I've got 4 or 5 things I'd like to discuss with you relative to the enrollment. Obviously, I think the number that's on here, a little under 20,000, was still recovering from COVID. So how low did you get? And conversely, what was your high enrollment prior to COVID?
The highest enrollment's about 23.5 in 2014. Our lowest enrollment was about 18.9 when I first started. And we have worked strategically in order to be able to turn that around. And the strategy that we've used is much better communication with guidance counselors, parents, and prospective students. We're communicating in the way in which students need to be communicated with today. A much better job relative to student affordability and student debt. We know that that's a major issue and challenge. So our philanthropic team has raised $200 million since the time that I've been there to be able to help support student scholarships. We now have both an in-state and an out-of-state scholarship program, and the out-of-state scholarship program, where we must look outside of the state to also attract students. We simply don't have enough students here in the state of Kansas, and the out-of-state scholarship model can enable those high-performing students, if they have a GPA greater than 3.8, in order to be able to get in-state tuition. And I think the strategy is working really well. If you look at the projection of where we plan to be by 2030, we plan to be back at the 23.5 to 24,000 students.
Right, thank you. Relative to K105, you talk about creating jobs or retaining jobs. Can you give me some examples of that?
Well, I have the expert in the room. Can I yield the floor so that she can provide, she's got the specific impacts.
President Linton, yes, I'll allow if they would come up to the podium and introduce themselves to the committee, and then if you could answer Vice Chair Sanders' question. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm Jessica Nabb, the director of K-State 105. So through partnerships, K-State 105 has put together programming that encompasses across the entire state. And by doing so, our partners that work with us work directly with small businesses, with entrepreneurs, with startups, with different programs that enhance our ability to do more business support. So when you become a partner with K-State 105, we do have data metric collection that happens. And one of the questions we ask is about job creation and our ability to retain existing jobs. And so we did quarterly reporting for 12 months. And then at the end of 12 months, we did a look back survey to ensure that all of the data that came into us was accurate. And then once we did the data scrubbing and the cleaning, we were able to come up with some of our final results for job creation. So through the support of K-State 105, using our funding, creating additional partnerships that really supercharged the business support is how we did that.
Can you give me an example of a type of job, a sector of the economy, wherever?
Yeah, so a great example of that is through our statewide partner with Network Kansas. There is an entity called Nextus that's in the Wichita, Kansas area, and they are an organization that supports small business and supports entrepreneurship and job training. And so they provide a lot of programming. It could be, pitch my idea. It could be helping to write business plans. It could be helping to analyze who your customer is, et cetera, things like that. So through those strategic partnerships, and that's an example that is happening kind of in the Wichita area. Network Kansas does have a reach across the state. So for example, here in Topeka, we would work with Go Topeka, and they have similar activities. So K-State 105 is kind of that conduit to take all of these different organizations across the state and really lift them up in the way that a land-grant university could do.
I might, Mr. Chair, one more quick one thank you, Jessica, for President Linton. So I had a representative talk to me, not on this committee, and that representative was concerned about we're not training enough Kansas students in the School of Veterinary. And their perception was that K-State wants to attract out-of-state students because of a higher tuition. So number one, I'd like to react to that. Number two, what is the tuition difference?
So there's I don't have the specific figures in front of me, but it's a significant difference out of state versus in state. When I had mentioned one of the reasons for the need for support for the College of Veterinary Medicine, we are challenged right now where most of the students that we accept, I think it's around 60% are out of state, and versus 40% in state, and that's simply a financial challenge that we have. And part of the support that could be used to be able to turn that around, I think that component, just to make that turnaround alone, is almost $4 million recurring a year to be able to shift that from 60-40 to 40-60. It's a financial challenge that we have. That's the only reason that we do it. We'd rather be accepting more in-state students for
Do
sure.
you turn away in-state students?
We turn away both in-state and out-of-state students. The acceptance rate is very, very small for a College of Veterinary Medicine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, President Linton. Do you have another?
Mr. Chair, there was a second part to his first question that I wanted to answer if I have just a couple of seconds to do so.
Yes, please.
The question was around student enrollment, and I addressed the question relative to undergraduate and graduate students, which is to jump from 18.9 at the lowest to 23.5 to 24,000. The other component to that, which is new and different, is being able to offer non-degree programs, credentialing programs, certificate programs. So as we all know, there has been a challenge relative to the decrease in students from high school that are going to any kind of college. From some 55% to 43% over the last decade. And two ways that we're addressing that. One is to try to articulate the important value of higher education and what that can do in a lifetime relative to the quality of your professional career. But the other piece is to really listening to what the data is showing, and if there are less people that are wanting to be able to get a degree, how can we help them otherwise? And so there's an additional 5,000 to 7,000 learners, which won't really be called undergraduate or graduate students, that we're looking at trying to educate to be able to help them with their career.
Thank you, President Linton. Next, we'll go to Ranking Minority Member Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Linton, for being here. There is an item that's on the priority statement that you all have is the Dairy Teaching and Research Center. We got an update on that a year ago, and one of the things that I was wondering about is it the same exact ask as what it was last year?
The research center.
I believe Representative Amix, you're referring to the dairy barn
Yes.
renovation project.
Yeah, so I think we know for several years there's been an aspiration from the dairy industry to be able to create better facilities on the K-State campus to be able to help support workforce development and research innovation. I think 2 years ago, there was funding that was provided so that we could work with the dairy industry to be able to do an economic impact study and a study that would show what facilities could look like to be able to support that industry. This is an industry that's doubling in size within a few years with a new cheese plant out in the Dodge City area. and our facilities are nowhere near modernized. And so in working with the dairy industry, we identified what the specific needs would be relative to a facility to be able to support our students, the workforce, and to be able to work with companies around research innovation. We have limitations in our asks that we can make through the Kansas Board of Regents. And this particular ask was outside the financial areas at which we could ask. I think it's between a $40 and $43 million facility that would be needed to have a modernized facility for the state of Kansas.
Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to follow up, and thank you for the projects listed.
Welcome.
The 45th district, but specifically my county. Now, I thought it would have been about 4 or 5 pages long. You know,
We like
living
to,
in
at Kansas State University, we like to save paper. Yeah, we just tried to give you a sense of the kind of partnerships that were there, the investments that we're making, the return on investment, but also the match. One of the things I didn't mention with K-State 105, in the $5 million that was provided, we had more than a one-to-one match around the state to equal $10.5 million in an annual year.
Thank you, Representative Amix. Go to Representative Potter Partial.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed in 2018, the KU Vet School, or K-State, sorry, K-State Veterinary School was ranked number 4.
You give us a medical school and it'll be good.
I was just wondering what has changed between 2018 and now to bring the ranking down so far.
So that's the ranking in support from the state. I think just a number of years of budgetary cuts here in Kansas, where our other states are pure aspirational universities and comparison universities have had a higher investment. It's been a number of years where we just haven't had that continual investment because of budgetary challenges.
Can I have a follow-up question?
Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that, what would the amount be of a recurring fund would it take to get back to where you were?
Well, that graph shows that we're $12 million below the average. And the $12 million below the average would put us at average. We're asking for $7.5 million in recurring support, which we believe that will be enough to enable us to be competitive in the way in which we need to be. So we're asking for less than what average would be. We think that, well, you can see that we're much more efficient than our other universities. We're top 8 in research innovation with 113 FTEs, versus, let's say, an Ohio State or a Texas A&M, which are 300 plus FTEs. We're not where we need to be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Representative. Are there other questions from members of the committee? Okay. Yeah, we can go to Representative Wagoner for a question and Representative Haskins after that.
Okay, real quickly. A very good presentation, President Linton. Very, very impressed with that. But I do have a real question about mission creep. I mean, it seems like K-State, okay, now you're getting into non-degree programs, technical certificates. You sound like a community college. K-State 105, is that not the Department of Commerce, economic development stuff? I mean, how is this part of the core mission of a research university?
President Linton.
Yeah, so I think we're moving towards what the future is of higher education. And I think that's what we have to be thinking about. And we also need to be thinking about partnerships. So let's give an example of K-State 105. There is work being done all over the state relative to economic development and job growth. And when this program was first launched, I think the Department of Commerce was asking the same question. There's not enough work that's being done, and we feel like we can utilize the cooperative extension network to be able to mobilize this throughout the entire state because of our partnerships and relationships. So I would argue that we are looking futuristic to where higher education is going and utilizing our assets in a different way in order to be successful. I think the same thing would be true for certificate programs. and credentials, there are certain kinds of certificate programs and credentials that likely Kansas State is the only one that could really offer those. So as an example, data analytics for agricultural production, which is a huge need that's out there that's not being offered by anybody else in another way. And those are the holes and gaps that we're trying to seal, again, using the assets that we have and just deploying them in a little bit of a different way.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is really a wonderful presentation. So whoever put this together, you give them a pat on the back. Really nicely done.
I will give Lindley 2 pats on the back.
Give 2 pats on the back. That'd be great. But I did have some questions on information that you shared, and I want to start on looks like on your 16th slide. It's 2025 Kansas State University priorities. You want a $5 million recurring and a $7.5 million. Is that for starting 2026? Okay, the 2025 kind of confused me, like, oh, is this reappropriation for the 2025 budget? So it's
I guess that it was it was being presented in
2025.
And there's a small clarification. The K-State 105 would not be a reauthorization of new money in a sense. It's actually continuation of a project that was funded 2 years ago, kind of in an experimental way to be able to see how it would work.
Okay, thank you. And then 2 more questions, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at our summary that Brianna gave us, but I just want to see, and it looks like you once again are asking to add 65.5 FTEs, employees to the university. That wasn't approved by the LBC. Am I reading that right? Is this something like, hey, we want, and it looks like specifically you were looking at instructional support or something along those areas to add more employees to?
Yeah, I'm not looking at the specific data that you have in front of you.
Okay.
I'd have to take a look at that, but we can get an answer back to you once we know what that data is.
Yeah, and the only reason I asked is because we had President Flanders here, and he too had made a request for just 5 employees. And my words, not his, it was just kind of like, hey, this is my organization. If I want to hire 5 people and I got the budget, I should be able to do it. And so I'm curious. That one sparked my interest. And then,
But I think in context, we have 6,000 FTEs
right.
at Kansas State. So I'm not sure what that number is, but that's a pretty small fractional number.
Oh, that makes sense too. And I appreciate that. The last question is, how much does the SGF cover your operating budgets at K-State? What %?
So roughly 20 to 25% of our budget is through SGF.
Great.
The rest would be tuition, philanthropy, and outside grants.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. And I guess closing, I'll do some cleanup questions, if you will.
Sure.
So there's been some Department of Commerce projects in the state, one of which is in Potawatomi County. It's Scorpius. And so they were supposed to come in, biomanufacturing, and create up to, at least the Department of Commerce announced it was up to 500 new jobs. And however, that project does seem to be on hold. Well, as I understand it, K-State came along to partner with, the state. It was engaged in economic development. And so you guys have stood up biomanufacturing training. And so if biomanufacturing doesn't work out in the immediate region, how quickly can you pivot the previous state investment to something else? Is that?
So biomanufacturing is still one of the most important strategies of the university. When we think about biomanufacturing, there are numerous company partnerships that we are currently involved in and looking to be able to create over the next several years. So while Scorpius, while a great opportunity for vaccine development to be in the region of the state, that doesn't deter our strategy relative to biomanufacturing at all.
Thank you, President Linton, for that. Also wanted to follow up. There's been some requests for bonding authority from the universities for specific projects. I didn't know if you wanted to comment a little bit about K-State's request. as it relates to the Ag Innovation Initiative and kind of what that would be for?
Yeah, so in the Ag Initiative, it's a $210 million project. Of those dollars, $75 million was received through ARPA dollars through the state in a 1-to-1 match and also a 3-to-1 match opportunity 2 years ago. We have raised the rest of the money to take us to about 193, 194. So we're about 16 or 17 million dollars short. And so that bonding authority is just in case we don't raise that money over the next year or so. It is our hope that we won't need that bonding authority. It is our hope and our intention to be able to fully fundraise for that by the time that we need it from a cash flow perspective.
Thank you for that comment, because I think that's very important that you're still ongoing with the private sector, trying to, or from philanthropy, you're looking at all those sources. So just because we give you the bonding authority, you're saying you may not have to use it.
Our hope is that we won't need any of that unless it's a cash flow kind of perspective. But our goal is to fully fundraise for the rest of that in the next year's time. That's the goal.
Thank you, President Linton.
We're on pace to get there. It's almost unprecedented. And I should say this, when there was a challenge grant that was given to us a few years ago, it was a 3-to-1 match on 25 million. We had to raise 75 million. It enabled us to be successful and work with our stakeholders and raise $84 million in 4 months. These are the kinds of partnerships that we really look forward to working with the state on.
Thank you, President Linton. Are those pledges or in the foundation fund? I didn't know if you could comment on that.
Yeah, so everything goes through the KSU Foundation and they manage everything and then they push the money when it's needed relative to the construction timeline.
Okay. Lastly, you commented and you emphasized in your presentation about the 72% of faculty, 67% of staff are under market. Now, when you're looking at under market, you're looking at peer universities, or are you looking at a regional catchment area in Kansas?
So we look at it in a wide variety of ways. We look at it compared to the universities that are in our strategic plan, and there are 12 of those, as well as regional land grants that touch our state. And if you take a look at those comparisons, that's where the 72% and the 67%. And there's also a study called the Oklahoma State Study, and it's housed at Oklahoma State that takes a look at land grant university data specifically for faculty all over the country, and we utilize that database in helping to understand where we are from a competitive standpoint.
So just understanding this challenge that's before you in trying to retain qualified faculty and staff, did that report that did this study, did it provide any directives of this is where you need to get to, or this is what needs to happen in order to get to a certain point? So, you know, as policymakers, we could perhaps make some adjustments that are targeted.
So I think they leave that up to us because they don't know who our comparative universities are. And so for us, we very strategically and systematically determined who are our competitive peers that we wish to be like. And if we wish to be like those competitive peers, we have to be able to make investments in programs. We need to be able to make investments in people, and we need to be able to be looking at a research innovation standpoint in a very similar way that they do. So as an example, when I was at NC State University, and I was a College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, I went through the same process with the Oklahoma State study and had a different set of peers based on where we wanted to be aspirationally in our strategic plan. So they look for us to be able to make that determination.
Thank you, President Linton. And if you have any additional information you think would be helpful for the committee to have, please, afterwards, have your team, get us that information as it relates to that compensation. But last question, speaking of Oklahoma State.
We're playing them tonight.
Well, I didn't realize that, but
We are.
I understand their College of Vet Med is on a probationary status, and they're potentially could lose accreditation. And so I understand there's the $7.5 million recurring for K-State Vet Med, and you've already demonstrated in your testimony that we're perhaps on the fringe, but could you explain a little bit further? I mean, would K-State lose accreditation if you don't get the 7.5 million recurring, or do you have a plan B? Or
Just saying, long-term, I think we're worried about the total amount of FTE that we have and being competitive and being assured of retaining that accreditation. If you look at the graph that on one of my slides, you'll see that Oklahoma State is one university below us relative to support from the state. I believe they are 2 less FTEs than what we are from a veterinary college, but I think in their perspective, they don't have all the different categories filled to be able to meet accreditation. It's my understanding that right now we have all the categories that are filled, but still we're struggling, you know, and you have to think of the dynamics with being very close to this challenge of accreditation and people leaving and being selected by other universities and poached by other universities. That's why this compensation piece is so important, and that's why support for the vet school is so important, and that's why we made it one of our priorities this year.
thank you, President Lynn. I've gone over my own established time limit, so apologize to the committee, but I appreciate your testimony and the time that you've taken, and I especially appreciate, I don't know how many members of the committee got to go to the animal diagnostic lab before session, but that was definitely eye-opening just to see all the needs that are out there. So I appreciate your staff and their hospitality, and look forward to working with you in the future. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
So next on the agenda committee is we're going to get back into the budget recommendations. So pivoting over to the University of Kansas, we'll start there, but I'll give everybody a second or two to get their papers in order. Okay, committee, so we're back on the University of Kansas budget. We do not need a motion to start the recommendations, so we'll just pick up where we left off. And I think where we left off was the chairman started introducing an amendment for the wrong budget. So I'll go ahead and have staff distribute that. Yes, this would be for the reappropriation for fiscal year 2025 for the Kansas Geological Survey. Okay, so the amendment reads, add $760,809 state general fund and reappropriated funds to account for airborne electromagnetic surveys at the Kansas Geological Survey for fiscal year 2025. So it sounds like a very interesting description. And so what does that mean, airborne electromagnetic survey? So the Kansas Geological Survey will be surveying from an aerial standpoint. They'll be surveying the groundwater management districts, and they'll be starting in northwest Kansas and working their way to southwest Kansas. And they're trying to survey the aquifer for groundwater levels and getting really hard data that we can use as we move forward on, you know, water policies or, you know, mitigation efforts to address the water shortage out west. So that's what that's for. It was approved in last year's budget. It was just lapsed because of the LBC global amendment. So I would like to move this motion. Is there a second? It's been seconded by Vice Chair Sanders. Discussion. Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is just one time for 2025 and doesn't apply for 2026?
As I understand it, this amendment is only for the reappropriation of dollars from fiscal year, I guess it would be 24 to 25, so this is money that they haven't spent yet, but they're in the process of spending the money. They just haven't got it done yet because they're in the middle of the project, so.
So it really isn't new money or new spending.
Correct. It was in last year's budget bill, so it was approved. It was just in that global amendment or reappropriation, it was lapsed. Vice Chair Sanders.
So another way of perhaps looking at it, Mr. Chairman, is that this just corrects a situation created by the global amendment.
That is correct. Is there any other discussion?
Well, then one other thing I would say, everywhere you go in this building, you hear how water is a problem. So I think this would be a wise investment.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we're back on the KU University of Kansas budget bill. Are there any amendments? If you have an amendment, just signal to the chair, then we can have an amendment passed out. Representative Haskins.
Just, thank you. I don't have an amendment, just point of order. We're just on the University of Kansas budget, not the University of Kansas Medical Center. Okay.
Correct, yeah. Anything else for the University of Kansas? 25 or 26? I will let the committee know that there has at least been, the chairman's been informed that there's a bonding request from the University of Kansas, but I'm working with the chairman of appropriations to see if we can bundle those types of requests and appropriations. So it's not being considered today, as I understand it. So one is for student housing. One is to refinance current bonds that are already existing to. So I just wanted to share with the committee that I've been asked to consider those in appropriations. Representative Wagoner.
Just a quick question on the bonding request. So how large, I mean, this is like 50 million, this is 100 million, this is how much money?
Representative Wagner, I don't have those numbers pulled up right before me. I believe the student housing, I want to say it's 60 million roughly. Currently in the budget bill, there is bonding authority for the University of Kansas Medical Center Cancer Center for 100 million. That's in the budget bill currently. The LBC did not. Yeah, it's in HB 2007.
And so do you know how that would translate? I mean, obviously bonding, just borrowing the money. I mean, it's like every year there's going to be, payments made, which I guess would be what would be in the current budget. Do you know how I'm not familiar with exactly how that would work or what the ratio would be.
It depends on what kind of bonds are issued, but for example, Kansas State University last year requested bonding authority for a student housing project, and I believe the auxiliary fees that are paid by the students for housing would pay for those bonds over the whatever term it was. So it wouldn't be state general fund dollars financing that. So I just wanted to, in transparency, letting you know I've been asked on that. So are there any other amendments or any discussion items for the University of Kansas? Yes, Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you bringing up the discussion about bonding. I think it's something that you and I have both received comment about, and I think it's important because, you know, we're obviously looking at multiple universities here, and it seems to make sense to be able to do that as a group versus looking at these things individually. So I think it's probably a better deal all the way around. Anyway, thank you.
And who knows, it could come back before our committee for consideration. We'll see. So some of these requests came kind of, I would say, last minute, and so still trying to absorb a lot of information in a short amount of time. Any other motions on the University of Kansas budget for the fiscal year 25-26? Seeing none, is there, what's the will of the committee? Representative Amix, do you have a
Just one more comment.
comment? Okay.
And I look at, you know, the budget here, and I look at some of the deferred maintenance things and realize, you know, we had that discussion yesterday on the 32 million, but, you know, the buildings that we have at our universities and, you know, throughout the organization, you know, we need to figure out a way to take care of them and pay for some of these things. One of these days, it's really going to bite us. And, you know, I appreciate all the comments from yesterday, but there's deferred maintenance on these. But anyway, another day.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions or comments or discussion? Seeing none, what is the will of the committee on University of Kansas budget for fiscal year 25 and 6?
Now,
Mr. Chair Sanders, do
thank you,
you?
Mr. Chairman. So we made some amendments yesterday. Yes?
Your question?
Not on KU, okay. All right. Oh, we're still doing K-bar. Thank you. Yeah, okay.
Today's
So-
just a separate budget.
So today's just KU. So then are we to a point where we need a motion to approve the LBC budget for fiscal years 25 and 26?
I believe
Are
it
you ready
would.
for that?
As amended.
Thank you, Vice Chair. It would be in order for a motion to approve the University of Kansas budget for fiscal year 25 and 26 as amended. So if someone would like to make that motion, I would certainly welcome it.
I would make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Representative Amix. Is there discussion? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we'll move to the University of Kansas Medical Center budget. Does anybody have a motion or any amendment that they would like to offer or anything they would like to discuss? Representative Potter Partial.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment, but it's somewhat conceptual, based on waiting for the fiscal note from the university.
Okay,
Medical Center.
thank you. As staff distributes that information, if you could explain a little bit what your motion and amendment would be.
It was brought to my attention that there is a medical app that limits parental access to records, test results, medications, health issues, past and future appointments of those who are 14 and older, unless the minor gives the parents permission to view the medical records. The only records that the parent will be able to see with that permission would be the immunization record and the allergies. So this would, if there's any state general fund funding that goes to this, it would cut that funding until it is corrected upon a report to the chairman of appropriations in the House and the Senate's Ways and Means chairman.
Okay, thank you for that. Uh, Representative, you had mentioned there's some other information, but is this the finalized proviso?
Yes, it is, because we do not have the number, if there is a number from the state general fund that's going to fund this application. The revisor might have more information.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion, I guess, or,
Need motion to amend this into the budget?
okay, there's a motion. Is there a second for the Potter partial amendment? Seconded by Representative Fairchild. Is there discussion? Representative Wagoner.
Yeah, for the carry of the amendment, just, so basically, you're saying the KU Med Center has an online platform or is looking about doing one that allows underage children to block their parents from seeing their medical records? Is that what's going on there, or what? I'm trying to follow this exactly.
Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the application is called My Chart, and it is where the parents are currently the proxies for the child until the child turns 14. And then the 14-year-old to 18-year-old has to grant the permission to the parent to view on My Chart. I can send you more on it.
Representative Wagoner.
But so the basic issue is that the parents, because these are underage children, the parents should still have access, and it seems odd that they don't. Is that what the issue is?
Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, state law actually requires that the parents have access until the age of 18 unless the child is 16 and emancipated from the parents.
Next, we have a question from, or comment from Representative Sweeley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just kind of the left out information on this, and not really sure if SGF actually funds this or not, and to what dollar amount. Are we sure it's the University of Kansas Medical Center and not the University of Kansas Hospital, because those are different agencies? We're working the University of Kansas Medical Center's budget, not the University of Kansas's Kansas Hospital.
Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The issue is that, from my understanding, a lot of hospitals use this application or similar applications for the data to the parents and children. So that's why it's just a blanket, not stating My Chart. But that was part of my inquiry as well, so.
Representative Sweeley.
Just opinion wise, shouldn't we try to take this up on an actual bill if it's multiple hospitals, or, you know, more than just one hospital and not just a budget? Shouldn't we be taking this up with the state of Kansas and not the University of Kansas Medical Center? Just from, you know, I'm a freshman, just asking questions. So
Is that a question for the chair or for Representative Potter?
whoever would like to answer.
Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not disagree with you one bit. The only difference is that if there are state general funds that do go to this and a law is not passed, I still would like to have it stopped. And I believe that there probably are current bills that are coming above the line within the next week that would address the specific issue as well.
Thank you for that. So I know there is sometimes confusion. You have the University of Kansas Medical Center, but there's also the University of Kansas Health System. There's some intertwining of the two in some capacities, in some ways, but I don't have all the judicial knowledge to know exactly where this would lie. So Representative Potter, if I may ask a question, you're saying that if we adopted the proviso and say we discovered that there were no state general fund dollars applying, it would be doing no harm, and that perhaps it could be addressed in another fashion. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that was the intent of this as well.
With that, I would only comment that the chair would support the amendment because it seems like it's not doing any harm. It's just stating the fact that it only applies if there's state general fund dollars attached to it. So Representative Haskins.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this. And I understand the direction we're going there. I would disagree that there is harm if we have a proviso that goes through to the appropriations and it's incomplete in making sure that it is something that needs to be there. For example, my colleague brought up, is this for KU Med Center or is this for the University of Kansas Hospital? We don't know. We don't know if there is such an app out there. We don't have a definition of what a minor truly is because the range was 14 to 18, but yet 16 came up in this. So I would say that this should not be passed based upon the content, and maybe this is something that if you would like to put a note or something else moving forward for us to consider, it's just incomplete on the information. And yesterday and respectfully, we established a precedent that if we have too many questions about it, that we shouldn't carry forward. Case in point, the Kansas Board of Regents amendments that I posed yesterday. So I would encourage us not to move this forward. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Potter, do you ascertain like how close you are to getting that information? Do you think, I mean, I have to report out the budget for University of Kansas Medical Center tomorrow to appropriations, but do you think perhaps that information would be brought to light before tomorrow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would refer to Brianna on that. She has the inquiry in. Probably 50-50 chances, my guess.
Okay. Well, I won't put Brianna on the spot here right now, but I'm willing to take that to appropriations if this committee were to approve it. And appropriations could always remove it, and perhaps this, even offering the amendment today, will allow us to discover what truly is happening and if there are state general fund dollars going towards it. Vice Chair Sanders.
Mr. Chairman, does this committee have any control over the budget of the KU Hospital or the KU Medical Center?
For the University of Kansas Medical Center, yes. University of Kansas Health System, no. The hospital authority is the correct term. And there's no, we don't have any authority over their budget. Representative Haskins.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add one thing, that the budget is for an institution of higher learning and not for a hospital system. The issues that we are talking about here may have violations of HIPAA and other type of privacies. And so again, I would just encourage, I think we've gone off a little bit of the rails with this amendment, and we should postpone until we have more information. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment or the motion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, or actually, Representative Potter, you may close on your motion. Sorry about that.
I close. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. All in favor of the Potter partial amendment, please signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there other amendments for the University of Kansas Medical Center? Representative Sweeley.
Just a second, let me pull this up, please.
Representative, is it a conceptual or does staff have something they need?
Staff does not, so it'd be conceptual, yes.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to combine the OBGYN and psych tuition programs into one specialty tuition program and increase funding by $2.4 million. This will broaden the spectrum, or broaden the program to accept more medical specialties to better serve the rural communities. So basically like the amendment that we heard yesterday, but instead of funding for a only OBGYN tuition program and an only psych tuition program, it is bundling those and including other specialties like oncology, general surgeon, cardiology, neurology, and increasing the funding by $2.4 million to the same thing of the primary care tuition program that we have at the state level. That's pretty much our gold standard for any tuition program that we have like this.
Thank you, Representative. Are you making a motion then? That's your motion.
I do make a motion, yes.
Is there a second? Is there a second on the motion? Representative Wagoner. Okay, now we can have discussion on the motion. Vice Chair Sanders?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How did you come up with the figure 2.4 million?
So like I said, those two programs that they had separate, the OBGYN and the psych program, was $1 million apiece. And the primary care program that they have is $4.4 million, but adding the 2.4 from the original 2 and broadening the spectrum of those specialties brings it to 100 available slots to serve these students to serve in rural Kansas. And, you know, they do a year for the scholarship afforded. And if they're not, they are actually paying interest on repaying these loans back to the state of Kansas. So it's not like the money just dies, goes away, but they are paying interest as well on these on these programs or on this funds when they come back to us. So it's 100 slots. That's where the 4.4 total came. It was already 2 million, broadening the specialty care to opening, you know, other specialties, like I said, but 100 total slots.
Representative, just for a point of clarification, your motion was for fiscal year 26, is that correct?
Yes.
In state general fund dollars, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that for the committee and staff. Other questions? I think it seems like there's a lot. I was going to go to Representative Amix next, then Potter, then Wagoner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for the representative who brought the amendment, so nothing would change in the responsibilities in the program. That individual, except scholarship, has to go to the rural areas, and if not, it's payback.
Yes, from my understanding, it'd just be identical to the other existing programs, but then adding the $2.4 million, excuse me, to make those more available slots to 100 total.
Thank you, Representative. We'll go to Representative Potter Partial.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While the concept of this is a great idea and something I could potentially support, I just want to make sure that it can be done without legislation, since it would be a scholarship and an add-on to it. Since it broadens the scholarship, I guess. Thank you.
Representative Swaley.
From my understanding, I mean, I thought that we could just bring this as an amendment, and going forward would that be, you know, existing money going forward. So the next year's coming up, 27, 28, it would be in the budget. And I would assume that the universities or the University of Kansas Medical Center would be continuing to ask to fully fund the kind of new standard of this program at $4.4 million until something else changes.
So the only comment the chair would have is, like, for the example, the osteopathic scholarship program that we funded yesterday, that's using state general fund dollars. The Board of Regents helps administer that and distribute the monies. And if there's a service agreement between the recipient and the state of Kansas, and if there's if that service agreement is broken, then they enter into like a collection or a repayment of those dollars to recoup them. Representative Wagoner.
Yes, just to the carry of the amendment. So I take it that this is not like reapportioned money or anything. This is totally something on top of the current LBC budget. Is that correct?
New money, yes. LBC approved the $2 million for the two separate programs. This is to broaden that spectrum to accepting, I believe, 7 to 8 or more specialty careers, and adding $2.4 million to open up 100 slots.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you look at the original recommendation of the Appropriations Committee, they basically passed out a budget that didn't have any enhancements in it. And I think there was a reason for that because in previous years, we were bringing in a lot more money than we were spending. And now we're spending about 400 million more than what we're bringing in. And we do have a large ending balance and have money in a rainy day account. But if we, jack spending way up, then, we're going to burn through that money pretty fast. And so I've basically taken the position that I'm probably not going to vote for any new money or new enhancements given our fiscal situation. And, the amendment that I introduced, even though it was a large amount, was already in last year's budget. So if there's some of that spending that we're just putting in from last year that was taken out, I'll vote for some of that, but I'm not for new spending given our state's fiscal situation and the fact that we're spending so much more than we're bringing in right now.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, in respect, I love this amendment, and I'll tell you why. 2 reasons. One, if you just visit with the Kansas Hospital Association, those in the medical field, they come back time and time again and say we are losing medical professionals in the rural community. And once we lose hospitals and health centers, that's when the rural community is going to die. And 90%, over 90% of Kansas is considered classified rural. And this is an exceptional investment. And the second reason for that is like, yes, I know that's going to add 2.2 million, but they have a residence requirement. And so that's going to add economic value within the local communities for those hospitals. So this is not anything different than any type of workforce placement, which will just grow the economy. And so I just love this amendment, and I think we're going to reap the benefits from it. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other discussion? Representative Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I like the amendment too, but I do have can we hear from the reviser on the question that Representative Marshall Parter asked in terms of, can we do this under the current scope, or are we going to need some legislation as well?
Jill, if you had any comment on that?
So it's my understanding what we're just doing here is adding money to the current program, so the university would just implement it through that current setup that they already have, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Representative. The only question the chair would have is the university, and you may not know this answer right away, but do you know if the University of Kansas is looking to enact legislation to expand the program beyond what you're offering today currently, or?
At this time, I don't know the answer to that question. But if we have a problem, if we get caught up in this, I will make the motion to do a one-time spend, and next session, we'll do the legislation, but I will be making the motion to do as a one-time spend if we cannot get the legislation.
Thank you for that, Representative. There's a lot of information that comes at the chair, and I remember at the beginning of the session, there was Hospital Association and other entities coming. They had wanted to expand certain scholarship programs for rural areas, but I think many of those bills were referred to the Health Committee, so I haven't been updated on where that's at. So, and another unique thing, the Kansas Medical Society was in town, hosted a lunch today, so I got to meet with some residency students and young doctors and great folks that work in our communities. And one person had brought up that sometimes, or perhaps we need to look at what constitutes rural. And they brought up an example of Andover, for example. That's in Butler County, but it's still somewhat in the Wichita metropolitan area. And so, the suggestion to me was, well, maybe you need to make it by zip code. And so I thought that was interesting, but it's not something we have time to consider today, but I thought it was worth us looking at as we look at legislation later on in session. So is there any other discussion on the Sweeley Amendment? Representative Wagoner.
Yeah, just, again, in certain ways, I like the amendment, and of course, I seconded it mainly to get discussion going. But I'm really very hesitant to go anything beyond the LBC budget. Just, I don't know, I think, I don't say we're setting a bad precedent. Well, we've already broken our precedent, but I think as a general rule, sticking with the LBC is sort of our baseline, and I don't know. I would tend to say I will say I'm going to vote no against the amendment, even though I seconded it for discussion.
Thank you, Representative. Is there any further discussion? Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is really just a point of clarification. That at the beginning of this committee, when we started, there was discussion like, look, the LBC has established a baseline, and they have encouraged us not to go above that. But the quote was that we can debate and talk about new appropriations. But it seems that if we use, well, I don't want to go above the LBC, I'm not sure why we propose any new amendments. Because if they continue to get shot down, knowing that we're just making a recommendation, it's not finalizing in the budget. Appropriations will do that. We're not doing our statesmanship, if you will, by not entertaining how the needs of the state of Kansas. So I'm just would like a point of clarification, because it seems consistently that we're trying to negotiate and add money, but yet we don't. No, LBC is going to say no. So I just need a clarification on that.
So as I understand it, the LBC recommendation is a base budget bill. They did not prohibit budget chairs from entertaining new spending or reappropriation requests or anything of that nature. That was just establishing a base budget bill authored by the legislative branch of government. And for example, is it the 28th? 29th? It's the 29th. And so, if we look back last year, did we even have the governor's budget bill, published where we could look at it and start going over it as a committee? And so the idea was it gives us a chance to start earlier in the process, but there's no prohibition on us adding, subtracting, adding proviso language or anything of that nature. So Representative Haskins.
And thank you. I appreciate that. I guess the question would be is if we didn't have this new process and the funds, and we went the way we have had in the past, we wouldn't have the LBC to base our decisions. And so this is a unique factor, and I wonder if we're utilizing this as an opportunity to make cuts that we would not have made if we didn't implement a new system. And I think that's counterintuitive of what the goal of the LBC was. Like you said, it was to roll out this so we can have more time to negotiate the budget, but not to just like, okay, we can't figure this out, let the committees do it, so we're just going to cut everything and just give the baseline. Because I would just encourage us to keep in mind we've been doing this for a while, and just because we have a new way of doing it doesn't mean that that's the rule. That's something that we're just kind of experimenting and trying out. So that's all my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We'll go over to Representative Fairchild next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as the budget process, we usually go with the governor's budget recommendations, and then we make amendments off of the governor's recommendations. And so this year it's different, but her budget was really pretty restrained this year as well. It was only about 52 million more than the Appropriations Committee was. And that's, quite a bit less than what the Board of Regents requested. And so, if we can't stay underneath the Appropriations Committee, then I hope we can at least stay under the governor's budget and we don't go above her budget, because every year that I've served on this committee, we've even been above the governor's recommendations.
Is there any further discussion on the Sweeney amendment? Seeing none, Representative Sweeney, you may close on your motion.
Yeah, just take a few minutes. I know we're kind of running out of time right now, but ultimately we're talking about $2.4 million on a total budget that's $631 million. We haven't done any cuts. $2.4 million is not going to break the bank. I hate to use that analogy because every committee is probably saying the exact same thing. I do believe that as a state of Kansas, like I said yesterday, we have not done enough for our rural communities and our smaller communities to have jobs like this stay there or be incentivized to stay there. It's not about spending the money, but about the economic development and the availability to get this care, and for people that live in smaller communities to have the same access to these specialty cares as everyone else in Kansas. And Wichita, Kansas or Northeast Kansas, because that's where it seems to be. Everyone goes to those two places. And it seems to me that we have forgotten about smaller communities and rural communities. So what we're asking is for 100 slots for $2.4 million. And that's 100 more specialty doctors we could have around Kansas. So that's why I made the amendment. And again, I say we're making $2.4 million on a budget that's $631 million in fiscal year 2026. I close.
Okay, Representative Sweeney's motion has been moved. All in favor of the amendment signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any other amendments or considerations for the University of Kansas Medical Center budget for fiscal year 25 or 26? Seeing none, what is the will of the committee? Vice Chair Sanders, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we approve the budget as amended for the KU Medical School for fiscal year 2025 and 26. As amended, yeah.
It's been moved and seconded by Representative Amix. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That concludes the budget recommendations for today. We'll reconvene tomorrow where we will be working on the Kansas State University budget for the vet med, the university, and extension. If you have any amendments or things you'd like to bring to my attention, please do so, but the meeting is adjourned.